All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is the very last video for your very last assignment for 8th grade virtual learning. Woo woo! Excuse me. Hopefully this will not be too difficult of an assignment for all of you guys. This is going to be an 8th grade review of solving equations. It's a mixed review. I did my very best to pick out a couple of problems that are going to be the most useful in identifying how to solve these equations. So on the right side of the notes that you took from assignment number 1, I want you to go ahead and divide your paper into 8 little sections. We're going to do 8 problems together, and hopefully this will be a great review overall. So the very first thing that you need to ask yourself when you start with these more mild problems is, how can I start using inverse operations in order to solve for x, in order to isolate our variable? Those are all terms and skills that we need to know carrying on into geometry as well as algebra 2. So here I've got 4 equals k plus 3 over or divided by 3. It doesn't matter that the equals 4 is on the left side if you actually wanted to even switch it. It doesn't matter. It's called the reflexive property. All you'd be able to do is just put the equals 4 on the other side. So it doesn't matter. And the very first step that I want to do is get rid of this dividing by 3. The inverse operation of division is multiplication. And so I can multiply both sides by 3. And that will cancel or undo the dividing by 3 on the left side. So then I get k plus 3 equals, what's 4 times 3? 12. I've included the Desmos Scientific Calculator link for you guys to use at any time. You'll hear me doing mental math, but you guys can do the Desmos math whenever you need to. Now there's only one more step involved here. If I'm adding 3 to both sides, the undoing or inverse is going to be subtracting 3 from both sides. So I get k equals 12 minus 3 is 9. And that's what I would put on my IXL. Same thing right here. If this is an equals 12 on the left side, I can totally, if you're more comfortable, I can just rewrite it on the right. It doesn't matter. Now this one was a little bit trickier because here we've got a positive 16. You add or subtract first, and then you multiply or divide or change your signs. And so this is a positive 16. The inverse that will undo that is subtracting 16 from both sides. Be sure that you take the negative down with the p. 12 minus 16. Do not do this in your head if you're not very good with the signs and subtracting integers. 12 minus 16 is going to give you negative 4. I have a negative p. I can change the sign of the p and make it a positive, but it means I also need to change the sign of the number on the right side. So my final answer is p equals 4. Moving right along. Here I have 12 divided by r equals negative 4. Okay, so now what we can do is we can turn this into a cross multiplication problem. This is what I would do to solve this one. You can put this over 1. And then we can cross multiply or do the butterfly method to solve here. And that's what we do when we multiply. So 12 times 1 is 12. And r times negative 4 is negative 4r. If I have a number in front of a variable, that means I'm multiplying. So the inverse of multiplication, to undo the negative 4, is to divide by negative 4. Not adding. These two are connected through multiplication. So 12 divided by negative 4 is negative 3. And again, you can use your calculator whenever you need to. Here with this one, we use the rule. We've got 2n minus negative 8 equals 20. This minus a negative, we apply the keep, change, change rule. So this becomes 2n plus 8 equals 20. These are not like terms. I can't add these two together because this 8 would be missing an n, or this 2 has an n. So we can't combine these. Now we're just going to use inverse operations to solve. The inverse of adding 8 is subtracting 8. We're not going to divide by 2 first. We're going to subtract the 8 first. I'm going to bring down the 2n. 20 minus 8 is 12. Now we divide. You get rid of the division last. You get rid of whatever is in front of the n or the variable. In this instance, it's n. You get rid of that next. So then this gives me 12 divided by 2 is 6. Moving right along, y'all. Here we've got a parentheses set, so my very first thing I should be thinking about is distributing. Distributing and combining like terms first. When we distribute, we multiply. So I get 3 times k is 3k, and 3 times negative 16, I'm going to use my calculator for this one. 3 times negative 16 is negative 48. And now I use inverse operations to solve. I'm subtracting 48 from both sides, or on one side rather, so therefore I'm going to use inverse operations to solve. Bring down my 3k. I add the 48 on both sides, so 6 plus 48. 6 plus 48 is 54. Final step is to get rid of the 3. How do I do that? By dividing, because that's the inverse of multiplication. 3k means 3 times k. So this gives me 54 divided by 3 rather, is 18. Okay, now this one, again, I'm getting a little bit trickier. First thing I need to do is distribute. Always distribute first. So 7 equals 2 times n is 2n. 2 times 2 is positive 4. And we don't distribute to the negative 7 because that's not in parentheses. And now I got to see if I can combine like terms. Not on opposite sides of the equal sign, but on the same side of the equal sign. So this positive 2 and the negative 7 are like terms. So I get 7 equals 2n, 4 minus 7. Be very careful with your signs here, guys, is negative 3. Again, if you're more comfortable with the equal sign on the right side, you can just switch it over. So the inverse of subtracting 3 is adding 3 on both sides. Bring down my 2n equals 7 plus 3 is 10. To get rid of the 2, I divide. N equals 5. Moving right along here, guys. Excellent job. This one gets a little bit spicier because you have variables on both sides of the equation. I can't combine anything and I'm not distributing, so I'm going to go right to moving my variables over to the left side of the equal sign and my constants, or my numbers without variables, on the right side. This is a positive 14g, so the inverse of a positive 14g is a negative 14g. And you're going to subtract it by its like term on the left side. So 15g minus 14g is just 1g. I don't need to put the one in front of the g. And I bring down the plus 6. Equals, this cancels, I bring down the positive 14. And now I have only one more step. The inverse of adding 6 is subtracting 6 from both sides. So g equals 14 minus 6 is 8. If there was a number in front of this g, I would have needed to divide. The spiciest type of problem that I could see was stuff that was involving decimals. So my very first thing I should ask is there anything that I can combine on the same side of the equal sign? And I can see that this negative 19.91 and this negative 19.86 are both like terms. So I'm going to type it into my calculator exactly as I see it. Negative 19.91 minus 19.86 gives me negative 39.77 plus 12.9q equals 15.9q plus 19.93. Now I can't combine anything else. Those are not like terms. And just like in number 7, I need to now move the variable terms over to the left and the constant terms over to the right. So this 15.9q is positive. To get rid of the 15.9q and move it over to be with the variables on the other side, I'm going to subtract it by its like term. So I'm going to bring down my negative 39.77. 12.9 minus 15.9 is negative 3. This cancels. I bring down the 19.93. And now we just use our regular steps to solve for equations. This is a negative 39.77. 0.77. That's my constant. So now I need to undo or do the inverse of that. So I'm going to add to both sides. Bring down, this cancels, bring down my negative 3q. Be sure that you're bringing down your sign as well. Now I'm going to use my calculator. 19.93. Again, you can use the Desmos. Oops. Plus 39.77 is 59.7. Final step to get rid of the negative 3q. It's not adding. It's dividing because this means negative 3 times q. So the inverse of multiplication is division. Divided by negative 3 is negative 19.9. So q equals negative 19.9. I'll have my last tutoring session to help you with any of these assignments next Friday, guys. But these are your last 2 assignments. Let me know if you guys need help. And I will talk with you guys soon. Love you. Miss you guys.